the 10th annual Tribal Healing to Wellness Court Virtual Enhancement Training hosted by the Tribal Law and Policy Institute. You have joined session E3, entitled Healing and Wellness, Integration of Cultural and Traditional Responses to Support Youth Wellness, presented by Ethleen Ironclad Two Dogs, Tasha Fridia, and Daniel Hena. Hello, I am Precious Benali, Tribal Healing to Wellness Court Specialist with the Tribal Law and Policy Institute. I am joined by my co-moderator, Anna Clough, who serves as co-director for the Tribal Youth Resource Center and lead for training and technical assistance for Juvenile Healing to Wellness Courts. We are also joined by Laura Smith, program assistant for the Tribal Youth Resource Center at TLPI.
Thank you, Precious. Recordings will be available in this virtual space and on enhancementtraining.org. Again, thank you for joining us, and I will now turn it over to Anna, who will be introducing our speakers for today's session.
Thank you very much, Laura, and thank you all for being here today. We are very happy to be at our 5th and final session of the juvenile track at the Healing to Wellness Enhancement Training. So for those of you who have been able to be with us during this week for the various sessions, we appreciate your time, and we are so glad to be here today and have two of my colleagues from the Tribal Youth Resource Center who will be presenting today, and then a guest from the Pueblo of Tesuque. So Ethleen Ironclad Two Dogs is a senior training and technical assistant specialist at the Tribal Youth Resource Center. Tasha Fridia is the assistant director at the Tribal Youth Resource Center. And then Daniel Hena is joining us from the Pueblo of Tesuque, and he works with the Healing to Wellness Court. And so if you want to learn more about my colleagues, you can download all of the session speaker bios. And I look forward so much to the conversation that we are going to have today. We are talking about cultural integration in the Healing to Wellness Court, and we know that this is a core component to Healing to Wellness Courts. We are joining on behalf of the Tribal Youth Resource Center. We have been so happy to collaborate as part of TLPI. We work under a cooperative agreement with the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, and we believe that children are sacred. We are here to support and work with communities who are developing prevention, intervention, or other court-based programs to support their youth. And we are happy to support any other federally recognized tribe. And so you can request training and technical assistance from us via an online form, and we will paste that in the chat. So I think, Tasha, do you want to cover our session objectives today? And then we have a couple of polls that we're going to go into.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join us in this session. We hope to have some really positive outcomes and that you take away something back to your community from the information that we share. So our session objectives today are to discuss and provide examples of juvenile healing to wellness court process and cultural integration into those processes. We also want to explore ways in which culture and indigenous lifeways and activities can support youth connectedness to their communities, essentially. And then finally, we want to engage with presenters, that's all of us, in a dialogue related to unique aspects of culture and community that can support youth wellness. And so really building upon the 10 key components that we all know and love and incorporating a very indigenous way of thinking of those.
Thank you, Tasha. So as I shared before, we have had some great discussions this week and moved through the entire framework really of the wellness key components. And today we are specifically focusing on cultural integration in the Healing to Wellness Court, but we're also talking about how teams and communities can build relationships to bring those components into the court. And so I'm really excited for the discussion that we're going to be having today. So yes, specifically today, we are talking about the Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court. So we know the enhancement training has several tracks, and hope you have all been able to participate in many of those. But since so many of you here are new to Wellness Court or interested in learning, we're specifically talking about juvenile populations. And so many of the courts that we work with are looking at an age range of 14 to about 21. We do have some communities that look at younger age, but that programming is very different than for older youth. And so when we talk about how to have a wellness court, follow the framework of the 10 key components, but also be youth focused. We're looking at developmentally appropriate approaches. We're looking at teams that know how to engage with youth and know how to provide services specifically for a youth population. And then we're looking at the higher need for parent and caregiver engagement. So when you develop an adult healing to wellness court, the team may be engaging directly with that adult participant. But for youth courts, you're looking at engagement with the entire family, with parents, with caregivers, with others who are involved in that youth's life. So there is an added layer of services and things that might be needed so that you can provide all of the services that are going to meet that specific youth's needs. And then for this session today, we are focusing on the cultural integration, the piece where we engage youth with the community, where we build maybe some things that they have not had in their life, if they have not had teachings or engagement with other activities in the community, ways that the team can integrate culture throughout the different processes in the Healing to Wellness Court. So I'm very happy to have this discussion. I know Tasha is going to lead us in some material that we have available through TYRC, and then she'll introduce our next speakers.
So as we've been expressing, we're really trying to lay a foundation here for you and really focusing in with this session on what makes tribal juvenile healing to wellness courts unique. And that uniqueness comes from the diverse culture and traditions that we have within our communities. That's one of our greatest strengths. And that sets these courts aside from other juvenile court models and really makes it unique. And so in this work and that we're doing today with this session, we are focusing on key component number 4, and that's treatment and rehabilitation. So again, tribal healing to wellness courts provide access to a holistic structure and phased alcohol and drug abuse treatment and rehabilitation services that incorporate culture and tradition. I think if we set that part of the component, the last part, if we set that aside, then we're running drug courts for juveniles, but really to be healing focused and culture focused, that's the goal of the work that we do. And we hope that's the goal of the structure that you're seeking to implement in your own communities. So with the wellness court concept, we are looking at trying to make it consistent with traditional Native justice concepts and methods. So whatever that means in your community, we really come at this from a mindset that every community is unique and has its own unique strengths and challenges and resources. And so we want to amplify and highlight those because we think that those things are going to ultimately determine success in your community, however your community defines that. So we do want you to look at that when you're looking to integrate culture. And then this would be a focus on the root causes of behaviors that result in court involvement. So really digging deeper beyond the superficial levels of why we behave in certain ways, why youth behave in certain ways, and looking at a lot of those interventions that we can incorporate to change the path and the journey of some of our youth who may have wandered off the path laid before them by their ancestors. And then finally, the traditional methods focusing on healing that are, again, holistic, they're strength-based. We incorporate the extended family, and a lot of times in our tribal communities, that's the entire community is the extended family. And so really looking at it as a community a community need, a community challenge, a community commitment and investment in our youth. And then that in turn leads to community healing. And so that's the model that we're promoting for all of our relatives across Indian country. So part of that integration is definitely community value focused. There are a wide variety of cultural, traditional practices and activities that can be incorporated into different phases within a juvenile healing to wellness court model. And these activities can have different focuses, or those focuses can be combined. So it could be partially diagnostic and healing, or restorative and cleansing. There are so many things. I think the really great thing about the tribal juvenile healing to wellness model is the diversity with which our tribes have information. And you're going to see that later in the presentation with our other presenters. And they're going to really highlight some of those ways in which they've done activities specific to their communities that have been beneficial. And so we have the option to make this what we want it to be. And I really think that's an act of sovereignty in determining what works for our children, how our children will be redirected and rehabilitated and restored in very traditional and caring, compassionate ways. So I think that's a part of it, because it's not just the activities we do, it's the approach and the intent and the values that we have as Indigenous people that are going to lead the work in the way that we do it. And then this model also provides opportunities to engage with spiritual leaders, knowledge keepers, elders. One thing that I would mention, and it is something that OJJDP promotes, which is who the funder is of the Juvenile Healing to Wellness and the Tribal Youth programs, and they fund our Training and Technical Assistance Center, is mentoring. And so not only are we gaining access to elders and knowledge keepers that have life experience, I have had the unique opportunity to experience some of the most amazing young people who are knowledge keepers in their own right, who are committed to their culture and to resilience and to being their ancestors' wildest dreams. And I think that is an untapped resource in our communities, specifically in the juvenile healing to wellness court model. A lot of times we focus at what are called at-risk youth, but there are so many great youth who could model and mentor and peer support these young people that may have taken a wrong turn. So I would also add that here as well. It's an amazing opportunity that I think we overlook time and time again. So then when we're looking at the treatment and healing aspect of it, there is a wide spectrum of treatment modalities. One thing that I question, and I encourage all of us to question, is even in the title of this presentation that we came up with, we're talking about cultural incorporation and integration. And you'll hear from Ethleen Ironclad Two Dogs later. And one thing that she has taught me, and I really come to think about, is moving from culturally integrated and culturally incorporating to a culturally grounded intervention and way of being and way of approaching the challenges and the programming that we do. And I think if we take it to that next level and go beyond that, beyond what is the expectation, that we will be so much more successful, that the young people will feel how much more invested we are. And it really solidifies and goes back to reinforcing our lifeways, whatever our community is. One thing that I like to say is to be I-SMART. When you're developing these plans and goals, there are a lot of SMART goals and SMART objectives, but I think we need to add an I in front of that, and that's an Indigenous SMART, right? So we always keep who we are at the forefront of every goal and objective that we have. And maybe for me, that would be W SMART. I'm Wichita or Oglala SMART, whatever it is, however you want to do that, but really thinking in the context of who we are and where we want to be and what our journey is for our children. So again, thinking about culturally grounded interventions. And then part of that is, we have some deficits. We have to acknowledge that within a lot of our communities by no fault of our own, by our histories and the experiences, the collective experiences of our people, that we are missing parts of our culture. we have lost parts of our language and some of these tools and resources that will serve a juvenile healing to wellness court well. But looking at things that are intertribal or pan-Indian, regional, looking to our sister tribes to fill those gaps in the loss of culture that we've experienced, and just doing the best that we can, because sometimes that's all that we can do. So again, when we're looking at cultural healing, they can be provided in conjunction with Western treatment modalities. And I think it benefits us to use all of our available resources and take a comprehensive approach and see how those things can work together, because they don't have to be mutually exclusive in this model or any other model that we choose to use. And we as tribal people and sovereign people determine how and to what extent we want those things to balance. So here you'll see a graphic that Anna and I developed. Seems like a long time ago. 2017 isn't so very long ago. But this is just a really great example of brainstorming ways that you could incorporate different aspects of culture, traditional lifeways, traditional ways of being. So that could be through tribal arts, ancestral kinship, re-establishing who family is, and addressing family and in those very intimate ways, and having that connection, traditional lifeways, and then ceremony and ritual. And so this can really be, I hate to call it anything like a menu, but you can pick and choose what is going to work for your community. You could have a blank form and fill in how this works for you, changing any portion of it. But I think this is a great example and a great model of ways that we can look at incorporating culture and establishing culturally grounded interventions in the juvenile healing to wellness court. Anna, did you want to add anything about this particular?
Well, one was 2017 it feels like a long time ago because it's 2020. But yeah, when we did this was based, just off an assessment of different courts that we were looking at and different things that had been integrated. So by no means is this an exhaustive list, but it's definitely done from viewing many courts and different things that had been integrated as part of their programming. So just wanted to note that. And that this diagram is in the Juvenile Healing to Wellness Handbook, which you can access on our website. So we'll put the link for that in our chat.
Right. And I think just because looking at the polls, we've seen a lot of the participants here are still in that planning phase, if you will, maybe just a very touching their toe and dipping their toe in the water of planning and dreaming about what a juvenile healing to wellness court could look like in their community. So I would encourage you to look at that handbook on our website. And even if we provide training and technical assistance to any federally recognized tribe, not just the ones that are funded through the TYP or the Juvenile Healing to Wellness. So if you want to brainstorm and talk about any portion of this, we are available. You can put in a TA request on our website, and we'd be happy to visit with you. We have a great, varied staff who have so much skill and expertise that, we would love to visit with you.
Thank you, Tasha. So we wanted to just bring this up, and I know I want to move on to our other speakers and make sure we have time for them. But as we look at the integration of culture and we talk about youth readiness coming into the Healing to Wellness Court. So as we talked before, these may be youth who have maybe not had different experiences, and we always want to talk about willing voluntary participation in learning and activities. And so one note I wanted to make was from the Gottlieb report, which is by Karen Gottlieb, and it was an assessment done initially on the first 4 wellness courts. And there were some things in there that were discussed about how you integrate culture, but you also allow people to engage as they become ready or as they would like to, and to respect the individual cultural and religious just views of your participants. And so, as we know, communities are varied. You may have communities with youth who are from multiple tribes. So, they may have different backgrounds or different experiences with other communities. So just looking at how you can emphasize culture, but doing that in a way that engages your youth as they become ready to participate. And just different things that you can do, integrating teachings, language, history, storytelling, and songs. There's so many things that can be integrated into your wellness court that can bring that to that youth's life, but do it in a way that respects, their individual views or the ways that they're wanting to engage. And so I know that that can be a delicate balance, but definitely encouraging and promoting those things, but also respecting those individual youth as they build relationships with your team and build those connections within the community. So with that, Tasha, I will let you introduce our next speaker, and then we'll move into the next part of our presentation.
So definitely my pleasure to introduce my Ina Ethleen Iron Clown 2 dogs. She is going to share some information in regard to cultural integration and youth prevention programs, and some stories from the Pine Ridge Reservation. So not only is she very well versed in all of the Western sides of what this work looks like, she is a cultural treasure. And so happy that we get to learn from her and experience the information that she's going to share.
Thank you so much, Jukshi. Greetings, everybody. Mitaku Yepi, my relatives. So glad to be here with you all. And thank you to Jukshi, Tasha, Anna, Precious, Laura, and coming up, our relative from Tesuque, Pueblo, Daniel, Hena. And so thank you, everybody, and all the participants. I really was glad to be able to present on the healing camps. So I've been part of a group for the past 6 years. This is the 7th year, a volunteer group that brings healing camps to our community for our children and youth and families who have experienced trauma, grief, and loss. And we call these Wo'asnia Wichoti. I'm Oglala Lakota, so I speak from that reference, and anything that I say is from that worldview. So I know that we have a lot of tribes out there. We have a lot of beautiful cultures. So this is just an example, and not a how-to or not a do it this way or anything like that. So we call them healing camps, and we try to use very strength-based language, like a healing-informed response to trauma experiences, exposure, along with, you've all heard, trauma-informed care. So we try to put in the response, right away, because we feel like if somebody has experienced trauma, that's going to impact their life, depending on the severity, as you all know. So these camps are held in Porcupine, South Dakota, on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, and they're also held in our sacred homelands, which is the Chesapa, the Black Hills, that's located in near Rapid City, South Dakota. Just to give you a frame of reference, it's a very big tourist area, and the Black Hills are considered the homelands and sacred lands to the Lakota people. So we try to take our children, youth, and families up there to experience that sacredness. So the goal of the healing camps are to, first of all, to treat them as relatives. So if you think about your children, your grandchildren, your family members, those that you hold very dear in your heart, we have a term in Lakota, Wachante Ognaka, which in the Lakota English dictionary would say generosity. What it literally means is to hold in the heart. What do we hold sacred in the heart? So we hold our children sacred, and we want to have a warm, compassionate environment for children who have experienced trauma, grief, and loss. So we try to really promote a worldview of looking at, the children, youth, and families as relatives, even though we are not blood related. So that means calling them by kinship terms, and that means treating them, as relatives and acting as a good relative toward them. We also focus on the wo'apia, the healing. So we offer an opportunity for the wakayaja, which in our language means sacred being, which it translates to child or children, and their family, if they wish, to receive a spiritual, I won't say spiritual, I'll say spirit purification or wiping off of the spirit residue left by the trauma. So Lakota people believe that everything has a spirit. So if somebody has experienced trauma, grief, loss, then that trauma, grief, and loss has a spirit. And it can attach to us and we can carry it around. So we have a process through our ceremonies to wipe the spirit residue of that trauma. So another goal is woyushki, provide a happy, fun, and accepting environment. And that goes for anybody, any kind of, if they have behaviors that are a result of their trauma, grief, and loss, we accept that that is a symptom of their trauma, grief, and loss. So we don't react to it. We do a lot of training with our own, group, our own volunteer group, to make sure that we're not, reacting in a way that would be negative or hurtful to the participants, to the relatives. So we do a wopaking, a spirit purification ourselves, as before we go into the healing camp, to make sure that anything that we're carrying gets addressed. We have a process, a ceremony for children who do not have a spirit name. In the Lakota culture, it's very important to have a spirit name. So my name is Ethleen Ironcloud Two Dogs. That's my census name. And my spirit name is Shina Ikikchui, which means takes the robe woman. And there's an ancestral meaning to that. And so we want to make sure that the children have that opportunity to have a spirit name, so that that will ground them more meaningfully to the earth, but also to strengthen their cultural identity. We also want to make sure that we have a goal of wichozani, which in our Lakota language means, it's kind of hard to translate directly into English, but like wellness, balance, good health. So we want to provide those opportunities. So we have a lot of outdoor activities. We have a lot of spirit activities, emotional, and then the mental, also learning. That's one of our goals. We have Lakota adult mentors to help the children to acquire skills, learn about the culture, and provide hands-on teaching. So early on, before we, whenever we get into camp, then we have these kinship charts, and we'll have a group, and we'll talk about being relatives, and we actually do a learning session about having, calling each other by kinship terms and learning to pronounce the kinship terms, because Chungshi mentioned about, being disconnected from the culture, that there has been, tragically, there's a lot of instances of that where a lot of our children, young people, and adults, don't have the connection to the culture or the language. So we try to provide that opportunity. So we have separate camps. We have a camp for children. We have a camp for young girls. We have a camp for young boys. So boys and young men, I should say, and girls and young women. So this is a photo from one of the healing camps that we had. And these two girls went through the womanhood ceremony. So even though, maybe not all of them will go through the womanhood ceremony, we still have the healing camp. But if they need that ceremony, then we'll incorporate that into the girls' healing camp. So this is a picture of the children raising a teepee for the children's healing camp. And this is really critical to our Lakota knowledge base as far as understanding the sacredness of the teepee, what the poles mean. It's important for, children to experience laying on the ground or sleeping on the ground to get the energy from Uchimaka, which in our language means grandmother earth. So the tipis are very integral part of the healing camps. This is a picture of one of our children's healing camps in the Black Hills. So again, like I said, the tipis are very integral to the healing camp, and the poles represent the 7 values, the 7 laws that we have as Lakota people, and there's 3 stars that are very significant from the Star Nation relatives, the Morning Star, the Evening Star, and the North Star, and they symbolize guidance. They symbolize, how we're supposed to conduct ourselves, live our lives. The cover of the teepee represents the blanket the child was wrapped in infancy, so like comfort, and warmth. We really promote evaluation. However, this is a volunteer group, which means that we don't have a lot of funds, which means that all of the funding, for the food and for the, the supplies and all of that has to be raised through private donations. We do get support from, like our tribal government. We do get support from other agencies and programs, but we don't have, what do they call, like resources, funding for evaluation. So fortunately, we do have some volunteers that have an evaluation background. So this evaluation summary of I think this was 2016, Checha Woapie Richoti, which means the Young People's Healing Camp, healing camps for Lakota youth. The response was pretty amazing. The 95% of them, 100% of them, 85%, 100% all, responded that, they received, they experienced positive growth. They, had belief in their own capabilities. Their Lakota cultural identity was strengthened. They increased caring for their community and expressing hope for a brighter future. So I really promote or try to, have some kind of feedback, some kind of evaluation for our camps, and overall it's been really, really positive. So this year, because of COVID-19, we're not able to gather in large groups, so we're planning for smaller groups, like maybe 7 children at a time or 7 girls at a time, 7 boys at a time. And then we're also looking at staying connected with the camp participants, like through Zoom or through phone, because these are children and young people that have experienced a lot of trauma, a lot of grief, loss, prior suicide attempts. So we try to stay connected to them, and then our group is talking about doing a virtual healing camp. So that should be interesting. But I really appreciate you allowing me to share with you. And if you have any questions, we have 7 years of experience developing budgets and developing agendas and, doing all kinds of organizing for these kinds of camps from a volunteer perspective. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. And I'm going to turn it over to my relative from Tesuque, Pueblo, Daniel Hena. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Daniel Hena from the Pueblo of Tesuque. I am the Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court Program Coordinator. I also the chair of our Tesuque Owenge Health Council. Glad to meet you all this morning, and I want to start off with a short prayer. Takiribo Ovia Winge VA VA Car Noah Hinda Iandi Ho Erano Ho now Kuman saying you up your going no or what up in the Rico and I'm all Noah Takiribo Wati Wemani Takiribo Heka Di Wemani Quampo say Yugi Papibo Wekani Ovia Winge Waini Ho. Thank you everybody for joining us this morning, and I want to thank the spirits and thank all of you for coming forth today, and wish all of your communities long life, good health and happiness. So thank you for joining us. So much of you have wellness courts, and so you have an MDT team, a wellness committee. We call ours a wellness committee, not an MDT team, to reduce stigma. So we call ourselves a wellness committee, and we did all the programming planning for our healing to wellness court, and we realized that we wear a lot of hats, so we're combining all these, having all these different meetings. We're going to DV meetings, we're going MDT meetings, health meetings, and we said, hey man, we gotta join forces, and let's stop duplicating services. Let's all combine and work together. So we formed the Health Council, and we all work under the umbrella of the Health Council, and we utilize all of our resources together. We work as a team, and we try to figure out our community's issues. And so we advocate, assist, and we coordinate the health and well-being of Tesuque Winge, which is our community. And we advise our Pueblo Tesuque Governor, Tribal Council, and Health and Wellness Division. And so our Tribal Council is the governing body in our Pueblo. And so, we're an extension of them, and we just advise them. We do work, and we, get their go ahead in order to do the things that we're going to do. So one of our approach basically in this was to increase our community's protective factors, decrease risk factors, and prevent deviance. And what we mean by the protective factors is well-developed social skills, strong family bonds, attachment to school, active involvement in the community, and religious organizations such as culture and tradition, while reducing the risk factors that increase vulnerability to substance abuse. And resilience is an important factor with our high-risk youth, because many are able to resist substances. And with that said, we use a universal approach. So target all youth without identifying those at high-risk levels. So that approach helps us reach to everybody across the board, not those that are just at risk or high risk. We try to help everybody. So we use that universal approach, and it's up to your team how you guys want to use that, how you guys want to approach it, because I know some are told, you don't want these high risk individuals mingling with other children that are not high risk. But within our programs, we use that universal approach, and we use confidentiality, so nobody knows that the high risk youth are there for, they might be court ordered or not. So, or they might just go voluntarily. So, we just keep all of that out and we approach everybody. But we have developed a couple of programs to just work with one individual youth if we need to. So we have those identified teachers already. So that's our strategy that we started with. And so our initial steps were basically to identify and prioritize the issues in our community, find out the rules and cultural norms about our issues. Before we, started bringing all these cultural activities, you got to find out, what's the rules, because sometimes there's cultural classes that you can't teach. You got to find out, you got to get that permission. Then we looked at the analysis of all the data that we collected, analyzed, and, we came out with a conclusion of that best fit our overall plan, because I said, we're all these different committees of organizations under the umbrella of the Health Council. So, this money can go for this money can go for this, because everybody has different pots, and we figure out how we're going to utilize that just to bring one cultural program rather than my program trying to bring everything. So what is the issue? So how do you find that out? So we had to go out. Well, first of all, what we did was we gathered all the data we had on hand. So look at all the data you have on hand. So we started in 2017. I started in 2017. So in 2015, there was already a study done in our community. And so I got that study, I gathered all that data, compiled it together. We had a CTAS survey that and that helped us get this CTAS grant in 2016. So we utilized all that data. And then in 2017, we just looked at all the police department data, tribal court data, all the incidents, the call logs, what did our officers respond to? What didn't they respond to? And we just combined everything together. And then out of those call logs, alcohol and theft were the highest frequencies. However, there were 2 suicide attempts, 1 youth and 1 adult. So, we said we're going to focus on this issue. So just because there's a high frequency here and there's a low frequency here, that doesn't mean that's a priority. Our community is first and our people are first. So, that's why, you got to assess and analyze and then conclude how you want to approach. So what we did was we did community forums, community events, held community events. And at these events, we distributed surveys and we collected the data. So we would have a community, so for example, for this survey, our youth coalition, they're an active group. They had a community-wide bingo, a grocery bingo. And so I went to their bingo and I created a survey. Our health council created a survey and we went out and we distributed it to everybody and said, what are the priorities in the community? And this is what they came up with. It was table language, cultural classes, alcohol and substance abuse. So those were the top 3 priorities. And then as you can see, the tribal ID cards, youth project, suicide prevention, mental health awareness, community health assessment, emergency management plan, those things were all identified as well. And as a team, we worked on all of these things. And so we're combining all of our grants together, all of our resources together to address these issues in our community, rather than have one department trying to do all of these issues, another department trying to do all these same issues, and then, working in silos. So we created that health council to break the silos and bring one team, one dream team together to help our community. And so the top public safety issues in our community. So we had that. The other one was a grocery bingo. This was a Christmas party that we held, and there was 350 people that attended that event. And we had 165 that filled out the survey. So it was almost 50%. So that was a good turnout and good overall survey. So 132 said alcohol, 74 said speeding, 49 said illegal drugs. And then as you can see, all these others, these are all issues that we're working on as well. And then 6 said child sexual abuse, 2 said elder sexual abuse. And so those are our priorities in our community. So just because, like we said, just because it has a low frequency doesn't mean it's not a priority. You have to analyze and see what's going on in your community and how you're going to address those issues. So these are what we're focusing on in our community. And then these surveys were all anonymous, so they're in a Dropbox. So when you have these community events, you give everybody one. You have a Dropbox where they all can drop it off, and it's all confidential. There's no names or anything on there. But we do have demographics in terms of male, female, age. So what we learned is a lot of females are answering our surveys and not the males. That's what we've learned that. So with that, as we hand out all these surveys, about every 10 person that comes in, we do random sample selection as well. So maybe every 10th person will say, hey, can you come in here for an interview real quick? We want to ask you 5 questions. So we do the random sample selection, do interviews, and we do the whole surveys. And then we also have a sign-in sheet to who wants to come to a focus group. We're going to have a focus group coming up. Who wants to join? And so we have them leave their numbers. And so, that's how you got to start collecting all your data to identify your issues in your community, or, that's a start. So yes, so you identify your issues, you figure out what you're going to work on, then you got to figure out the rules and the cultural norms of your community. So, like many communities, suicide, death is taboo. You can't even talk about it in those communities. So you got to go You got, for us, we have our tribal council. So you got to go ask them, get permission. You know, can we talk about these things? Our people are dying. If we show all the data, it shows, you know, Native Americans are twice, you know, our numbers are twice as high than the rest of the population in terms of diabetes, in terms of health, in terms of suicide. So, you know, once they see these numbers, you know, you got to realize, you know, this is our community and we need to help them out somehow. So you got to get that permission. So once you get that permission to do what you got to do, then you can move on. So we got our permission, and so then you got to figure out, you know, what's the awareness, you know, where we at. So what we utilized was a community needs assessment, and this needs assessment, it has 9 different levels of is your community ready to make a change or not, you know. So we had to figure out our community's mindset. So we did the community needs assessment, and we came out with a vague awareness. That was the third from the bottom. So that was the number 7. So we're low. So it said, you know, your community, most feel there is a local concern, but there's no immediate motivation to do anything about it. You know, so how do we motivate our people? How do we get them to want to make a change? I know I talked about the issues earlier. So after you figure out the issues, you figure out the rules, your cultural norms, get the okay to go ahead, then you have to analyze, you know, all the different issues in your community, all the ones that you saw. Which ones are we going to work on? Which department's going to attack this? Which department's going to attack this? Which committee is going to do this? Which grant is going to buy this for buy food, buy drinks, going to buy the supplies for all the classes, and who's going to pay for the teachers? A lot of it starts like we were talking about earlier. A lot of it's voluntary. You know, a lot of it for me is voluntary. All this work I do is a lot of it is voluntary. So get ready to do a lot of work, you program coordinators. If you want to bring cultural activities to your communities, this is what you got to do. You don't get money for these programs. You get money for your department heads, your coordinator, your JPO. You know, they don't give you money unless you get a TYP grant. Then you can implement these programs. But if you don't get it, like we didn't get it, all we got was the Juvenile Healing to Wellness grant. So that's why we had to, you know, initiate all these other things to bring the activities to our community, the cultural activities. So like we said, we looked at current grants, future grants to see where each issue could fit within our overall plan. We focused on cultural identity and suicide with that grant that we were analyzing at that time. So our conclusion was that alcohol abuse and suicide prevention is what we chose to engage in, because our community waited until after someone attempted suicide, and by that time they're already skewed off balance. You know, it's too hard to make a change, and they've learned all these negative coping strategies with alcohol, substance abuse, and so, you know, it's too hard to change. They have that behavioral, physical, social, emotional, spiritual well-being. It's skewed off balance. So we got to try and bring them back. And so we were learning that our adults, it's too hard to make that change. They can still make that change, but, you know, we figure we gotta make that generational change. Start with the youth, you know, and then the parents, and then elders. And so that's why we started with the youth. We chose a evidence yellow ribbon suicide prevention curriculum because, like we said, a lot of suicide is not talked about in our community. So how are we going to talk about it? So we brought in a suicide prevention program. We had our school board, we had our parents, we had our health council, we had our tribal council. In community, we all took this yellow ribbon curriculum, learned about suicide, learned about different issues about suicide, and they gave us these yellow ribbons. And so the focus was that if you have a yellow ribbon and somebody sees it, they know that they can talk to you. So with that, we had our elementary students, are kindergarten through 6th grade, and they have this elementary curriculum where they showed them pictures of faces, like a happy face, sad face, and there was 4 different faces. And so they taught the little ones, if you feel like this face here, you know, you can go and talk to these guys here. So we had our youth coalition. They're about 16 to 18. We had them take the curriculum with the elementary students, and so they gave those youth coalition members a teddy bear. It was a yellow ribbon teddy bear. This one's a mental health first aid teacher teddy bear, but they gave them yellow ribbon teddy bears to our youth mentors. And so the elementary students know if they're feeling sad or not feeling good, that they can go talk to these mentors, and then they can grab the teddy bear, and they know that, you know, they have something to talk about. And so we don't know if this is a best practice or not, but we initiated this process because the conversation needs to start, and we need to start somewhere. So, you know, that's why we started. So the partners that contributed, we have our community school, we have our principal, we have our table language teachers. So when you're building these programs as well, look at all the resources you have. Some of you may have a school that teaches language. How you reach out to those people, and how can you work together to bring these cultural activities to everybody rather than just the ones at the school. And, you know, that's how we worked on it. We have our police department. We have 8 Northern Circles of Life, mental health therapist, our juvenile healing to wellness court. We have our community member who is also a nurse. We have another community member at large. We have our health and wellness division. Our director, our scholarship coordinator, we have our youth coordinator, we have our ICWA program, domestic violence program, our CHR, and then our fitness and rec. Also our tribal court as well. So this was the team back then, but it has expanded since then. So after you've gone through all this process, gotten the approval, figured out what you want to work on, concluded what you want to work on, then you got to go out to the youth, reach out to the youth and find out what they want. You know, we had focus groups with our youth coalition. Then we went out to our high school, our junior high. We met with all our students, and we had them prioritize the cultural activities that they wanted to see. And then we had them prioritize regular activities. And then that way you can bring both. You know, you don't want to just bring cultural. How can you incorporate the regular activities? You can create language into the camping, into the fishing, hunting. You know, you incorporate everything into this. Softball, basketball, you know, have them speak the language when they're playing the game. You know, there's different activities to incorporate the language. It just doesn't have to be the prayer class or the embroidery class. It can be any of these activities that they want. You can incorporate language into that. The previous slide was a focus group session with our youth coalition. Now this one, all these programs here are from going to the schools. And so all of these are the activities that the youth identified throughout that. And so summer jobs, Wi-Fi to the Pueblo, and drug awareness was the top 3 that the community wanted to see. So I had the youth identify all these activities, and then at our Christmas party, we had like 300 people there. I had them prioritize those issues, but I also have the youth prioritize list as well. And so we don't just focus on the top 3. We've been focusing on every single activity there, and we've been bringing it to our community through different grants and different programs. So once you find out the activities that are needed in your community, then your team can start working on bringing these things to your community. So we created an application. So originally we were going to have our classes start with everybody fill out an ACE, but we said, no, we don't want to be too harsh. We want to build rapport. We want people to come and respect the class. So we created our own application. And so we asked them, you know, this class is being provided to assist your community's well-being. And then we asked them, you know, how is this cultural class going to assist you with your health? We had skill development, cultural identity, stress relief, community engagement, bereavement, alcohol, and substance abuse. So out of this embroidery class that I'm going to show next, we had 24 people attend that class, and they filled out this application. And so 19 said skill development is why they're taking the class. 14 said to identify with their culture. 12 said community engagement. 12 said stress relief. 4 said bereavement. 2 said alcohol prevention. 1 said substance abuse. And then the other was just to keep occupied mentally. There wasn't too many others. So this is the form that we created just to start a baseline approach and build rapport in our community. So this is the first class that we came up with was an embroidery class. This is a traditional kilt, a sharawage. This is what we use in our dances. And so this was a class that we started. And so here they were cutting out the garments for the kilt. Everybody got to do it. So everybody was watching to learn in the beginning. So because when it was their turn, they had to do this, cut their own kilt as well. Go to the next one. And then they had to measure hem spacing. So this was a class with youth and seniors and adults. So it was a combined class. Everybody learned from each other. Yes, and so some of them were waiting for their turn. So they were watching what to do from everybody else. Everybody's had their kilts cut out already, and now they're getting ready to start their borders and making sure that their kilts are even and not uneven. Here they're spinning yarn. Originally they were using regular yarn, and then some of the experts that were there, that already make kilts, they said, this is how you spin yarn. If you guys want to do it the traditional way, then this is how you do it. And then so everybody started spinning their own yarn, and it added an extra month to our class because a lot of people were just spinning yarn that whole time. So they were using the ground at first, and so they kept on sliding all over the place. So they started using their shoes to improvise. And then they started transferring the yarn from that they spun onto a spindle. That way they could start utilizing it and saving it. And then those balls that you see at the end are the completed spun yarn. And so once those were done, then everybody could start doing their embroidery. And here you can see they're starting the foundation. They're still implementing the border. And the other one, they're starting the designs. And some of them created their own designs with their Indian names, or other ones use a traditional design that usually that comes on the kilt. Okay, so this is our buffalo dance here in Tesuque, and those kilts that are being hemmed, that's what they come out to later on. The buffalo wear the kilt. As you can see, the female wears the dress, and so one of the girls in that class made a dress, and she didn't make a kilt, and so that was neat too. And then here we have our songs that we sing. We have regular cultural activities here that we do with our community. We have feast days where we dance, and this is one of the dances that we do during Christmas. We dance on Christmas Day, and we usually dance in January, the first weekend and Saturday, to honor our new tribal councilmen that have been appointed. And then in the summertime, we do our harvest dance, because we're a horticulture society, so we plant, and everything's based around horticulture. And so in the summertime, we dance for prayers, and we dance for good rain, good harvest. And in the wintertime, we dance for our animals that give us good strength and good life. And here you see our young member carrying on the song. So they've created their own dance group, and they go around to different areas and they dance. So they've danced at our state fair. They've danced for Public Health Day at our state legislature. They've danced many events. So we're proud of them. And then we also had a youth arts and crafts show. And this is he's one of my godsons. He's 5 years old, and he knows his grandmother is a a jeweler, and she taught him how to make jewelry, and he has his own little stuff. A lot of it's already pre-made, and then he just puts on the beads, but he still gets the work done, and he still sells it. So he's really coming a long way too. So a lot of our small youth are learning different activities as well, not just the ones that are in trouble. So that's why we say use a universal approach. We want to teach everybody across the board. But yes, you need to have a program for your healing to wellness as well. So, you know, however you guys build that is up to you guys. You guys have the freedom to build what you want to build. And that's what's cool about these programs here. Cultural activities is we create that baseline data. We create what we want to create, and we design it. So what we did was we built rapport with our community members. We provided a safe, drug-free environment. We developed skills. We allowed members to identify with their culture. We allowed members to socially engage. We completed surveys, focus group sessions for other grants. And we learned how to improve the class. The most important lessons learned was the participant skill levels, finding a pace that everyone could follow. We allowed others to show methods like spinning yarn. What didn't work was keeping the materials in the class. Originally said we were going to keep all the materials in the class, but just because the class extended so long, we let them take it home, and they could work on it on home. And then you have to find money for food and drinks. You know, that's where that teamwork comes in. Sometimes we find the grant and we bring the food in. Other times we do a potluck. You know, one person's going to bring it this week, the next person's going to bring it the next week, and that's how we brought food. In terms of the language programs that we created, one of the things that we learned was everybody wanted to have electronic devices. They wanted pictures, so we created a book. It had birds, like just pictures, and then we had the tailor names, and so they have all different kinds of birds and stuff that they could study. It's just simple stuff you can print out, and then that they could study at home. We had tests. Our original test that we gave, our assessment was a table language, and we asked them, you know, what is your table name, your clan name, family clan? Can you count to 10? Name the 4 directions, name the 4 colors of the directions. Can you recite a prayer? How many birds can you name? How many bugs and insects can you name? And so that was their test. But when they first came into the class, we asked them, what do you guys want to learn? What subjects do you want to learn? And that's how we built our curriculum. We just didn't say, you guys are going to learn this. You know, we asked them, what do you guys need to learn? And then we approached it that way. So many wanted to have electrical devices. Many wanted things that they could see. We created a walking book so they can go to a place names area, so they can walk and they can hike. So we identified different hiking trails, and then in these they can fill in the names of the cultural sites, and because we don't have a written language, and so we don't have a certain way to spell a certain word. And so we let them spell it out their own way. It's not a spelling test, you know, it's however they can learn to remember it. We also gave them a dictionary. We created a dictionary that has all the words, and then we told everybody, spell it your own way. Spell it however it will make you remember. So those are the things that we learned through our community. And the main thing is it's a lot of hard work. You guys are going to get tired, exhausted. Like you said, you got to be committed, and you got to want these things for your community. I'm from Tesuque, so my community needs this, so I'm here for them. So thank you for letting me present.
Thank you, Daniel. I've heard so many good things, and I wish our session went you know, for much longer, because I know we could talk about so many more things. But I heard some really good things about integrating the services that you have in place so that you don't get that burnout with, you know, one coordinator trying to build up all of these different programs for just this one small group of youth, but really trying to connect with the other things that are already going on in the community, and then working with other program providers so that you all are kind of building some collective resources that your youth can access. So really appreciate that perspective, and for all of the photos and things that you shared, all really great ideas of ways to integrate cultural activities within the Wellness Court framework. And then I wanted to go back to Ethleen's presentation and just talk about how looking at how prevention activities and things that are going on in the community, how those things can be integrated and pulled into the kinds of things that are going on for the youth. But I appreciated what Daniel shared about how, we don't want to alienate this group of youth and say, oh, well, these are the kids that are in trouble. If you listen to another session this week, we talked about the spotlight effect and how youth can feel like, people are thinking about them and the issues going on with them. And it's really just, we want to provide these services for our youth, all youth, but especially looking at how can we make sure that there's those positive supports. And so having those youth engaged with one another, I think is wonderful. So thank you so much for everything that you shared. I know there's not a lot of time for discussion because we do need to close out, but if any of you had questions or comments and you weren't able to share those today, you can share those with our team and we can connect you with our speakers. Anyone who is on today, if you want follow-up, would love to do that. I know Precious has some closing announcements about the evaluation, but again, thank you so much to Daniel. Thank you again to Ethleen and to Tasha for everything that was shared today, and for all of you who joined us over this last week and then today. Thank you for your time. Look forward to continued conversations and ways to connect from the TYRC and from TLPI.
Thank you all for attending session E3, Healing and Wellness, Integration of Cultural and Traditional Responses to Support Youth Wellness. You can find the recordings of all enhancement trainings at enhancementtraining.org, along with all accompanying presentation materials as well. Thank you for joining us for our first virtual Wellness Court enhancement training. We enjoyed having you, and take care.